This is one of the coolest things I've ever made. It's definitely a slam dunk, so let me show you. First, I got a piece of 1 inch thick plywood and I measured it to 33 inches and I cut it down with my circular saw. And this is also it's like in a collapsible dolly / workbench, and it's probably one of my favorite things that I own. And I used it to cut down the plywood, and I use this for all my DIY projects. So I sanded down the edges, and then I got out my iron and I got out some edge banding. And what edge banding is, it's basically just a spool of very thin veneer. And this is what I use to iron on the sides of plywood when I want it to look like it's one solid piece of wood. And all you literally do is just use your iron, you heat it up, you do it around the edges, and the inside of it is with like a very, very tough glue. And this is what sticks to the edge of the plywood. And I just took an X-Acto knife and just cut off the excess around the edges. And then you're left with one giant sheet of plywood with perfectly, and I mean perfectly edged up sides. And this is all in birch. So yes, it's sandable, paintable, and stainable. And I love this stuff. So when that was done, I sanded it down smooth, and then I got out, I think this is 1.5 inch thick tape. And I use this to evenly space out all of these stripes. Now I do this by laying one down, and then I use like a little fake piece in the middle to make sure it's even all across the board. And it should look something like this once you're done. It's actually pretty satisfying and looks pretty dang cool. Now, my tip, this is my go-to tip for getting perfectly clean stripes every time. It's to lay down your tape and then seal it with a clear coat of your choice, and this will seal in the ends of the tape. I promise you this works every single time. Then I got out a no pain gel stain from Dixiebelle. This is probably the only like proper gel stain that I use. It's so good. Oh yeah, wear gloves because it is oil-based. And I just spread it on there in some even thin lines, and then I rubbed it back. And the thing with staining plywood is it never really does come out fully even because plywood's made with so many different kind of like materials and particles. Just keep that in mind. And then when it was dry, I peeled off the tape and I was left with these very cool stripes, and I was loving how this was turning out. Now, while that was drying, my go-to cleaner, this stuff's called scrubby soap. I don't know if you ever heard of this or used this, but it's like the best thing on the market. It's this really special soap built into a sponge, and it helps remove oil and dirt and grease so beautifully. I use it to clean my hands and my brushes. Next, the fun part, I got out a half-wood dowel, and I got this thing out called miter shears. And these are so cool because you can cut perfect angles just like you're using a pair of scissors. So you just put the wood in there and you cut it down, and it clamps them at literal, and I mean perfect 45-degree angles. So I did this all around my piece of plywood, and I used a pin nailer to nail them in so the actual nails are like microscopic, you can't even see them. And I did a little square almost in the middle, but down more towards the center. So it's a little bit off-centered, but it's lowered more, and you'll see why. And if you can't guess what I'm making already, then you should watch some sports. Anyways, I sealed the entire thing with 2 coats of gator hide. It's my go-to most durable top coat, so I always use it. Okay, this should give you a hint. Next, I bought a basketball rim on Amazon, and it's probably easier to spray paint this, but I don't have any spray paint, shockingly enough, so I used some Bonding Boss, which is an adhesion primer, and I primed it. I did 2 coats of that, and then when it was dry, I used Umber. This is a silk paint. Always my go-to paint. This is like a really dark brown, and then I painted the rim in this color as well. And next, once the board was dry, I turned it on its back, and I used 4 of these hangers in all 4 corners and evenly spaced them out. Make sure it is even because this is key to this project. And they look like this. And next, I screwed on this rim right below the square that I built and made sure it was nice and sturdy. And I got these cute mini blow-up basketballs, and I pumped them up so they look like this. And now you have a DIY piece of artwork basketball hoop. This is actually going to my friend's house for her son's bedroom. I thought this was such a cool project. What do you guys think of this?